3 months passed quickly after the Crimson Talon left Station Harmony 7. Thelvar returned to Velcran space and resumed his duties as a military captain. But he found himself changed in ways he had not fully understood at first. The hybrid repairs worked flawlessly, better than flawlessly. His quantum drive operated with greater efficiency than it had when the ship was new. The power distribution system that Minho had jury-rigged from mismatched parts continued to outperform the original Velcran components. Even his crew noticed the improvements. More importantly, his Velcran engineers had learned new approaches from watching the humans work. They began questioning old assumptions, trying new techniques. The rigid perfection that had defined Velcran engineering for millennia was showing cracks, and through those cracks, innovation was beginning to grow. When the time came for scheduled maintenance, Thelvar made a decision that shocked his crew. Instead of heading to the nearest Velcran military shipyard, he filed a request to return to Station Harmony 7. The response from Velcran High Command was swift and angry. Admiral Krekthor himself sent a message, his face on the screen twisted with outrage. "Captain Thelvar, your request is denied. It is completely inappropriate for a Velcran warship to prefer primitive human facilities over our own advanced shipyards. You will report to Velcran Orbital Station 3 for maintenance as per standard protocol." Thelvar had expected this response. He replied calmly, "With respect, Admiral, I believe you should see Station Harmony 7 for yourself before making judgments. I request permission to escort you there personally." "Absolutely not," Krekthor snapped. "I will not waste my time watching humans fumble with technology they barely understand. Then I will file an official report detailing the superior quality of their work," Thelvar said, "including the fact that they identified and repaired problems our own engineers missed. Problems that would have caused critical failures within weeks." This gave the Admiral pause. Thelvar was a respected officer with an outstanding service record. If he filed such a report, it would raise uncomfortable questions. After a long silence, Krekthor responded, "Very well. I will accompany you to this human station. But this is highly irregular, Captain. You had better be right about this." 2 weeks later, the Crimson Talon arrived at Station Harmony 7 with Admiral Krekthor aboard. The Admiral had spent the entire journey making skeptical comments about human capabilities. Thelvar remained silent, knowing that actions would speak louder than arguments. Jiwoo greeted them professionally when they docked. If she was intimidated by having a high-ranking Velcran admiral aboard, she did not show it. She simply processed their maintenance request and offered to give the admiral a tour of the facilities. Krekthor walked through the repair bays with barely concealed disdain. He criticized everything. The equipment looked outdated. The organization seemed chaotic. The mixing of different species technologies was offensive to proper engineering principles. Then he saw something that made him stop. In one of the main bays, a massive Velcran dreadnought was undergoing repairs. The ship was the Relentless Dawn, a legendary vessel commanded by Captain Helvar, a war hero known throughout Velcran military circles. "What is the Relentless Dawn doing here?" Krekthor demanded. They found Captain Helvar supervising human engineers who were working on his ship's weapons systems. The old warrior greeted Admiral Krekthor with proper military courtesy, then explained, "The humans are upgrading my targeting systems, Admiral. They identified inefficiencies that our own engineers said could not be improved. The upgrades have increased my weapons accuracy by 43%. "Impossible," Krekthor said. "Velcran weapons systems are already operating at maximum theoretical efficiency." "That is what I thought too," Helvar admitted. "But these humans showed me that maximum efficiency within one design philosophy is not the same as maximum possible efficiency. They combined Velcran precision with Quellan computational algorithms and human adaptive targeting. The result exceeds anything I thought possible." "And how long did this miracle take?" Krekthor asked sarcastically. 1 week, Helvar replied. "Our own engineers estimated 6 months for any significant targeting improvements, and even then they were not confident of success." Admiral Krekthor was visibly shaken. He had expected to find Captain Thelvar foolishly wasting time at an inferior facility. Instead, he found one of the most respected captains in the Velcran military voluntarily using human services and praising the results. Later that day, Thelvar arranged for the Admiral to attend a presentation by a young human engineer named Gina. She was proposing something radical to a council of alien captains, establishing cross-training programs where human engineers would teach their methods at alien facilities while learning advanced theories from other species. Gina spoke with confidence to the assembled captains. Imagine if every species combined their specialist knowledge with humanity's generalist approach. Velcran precision plus Draxian power management plus Quellan computational theory plus Solarian material science, all working together. We could advance galactic technology by centuries within decades. Every species has spent thousands of years perfecting their own approach. She continued. That knowledge is incredibly valuable, but it is also isolated. We propose breaking down those barriers, sharing techniques freely, learning from each other. A Draxian captain raised an objection. Knowledge is power in the galaxy. Why would we share our secrets? Before Gina could answer, Doyen stood up from the audience. Because knowledge is not diminished by sharing. It is multiplied. Every ship we repair, every captain we help, every innovation we share makes the entire galactic community stronger. When everyone succeeds, humanity succeeds. Admiral Krekthor listened with growing discomfort. These ideas challenged the fundamental structure of Velcran society. Engineering guilds had maintained power for millennia by controlling knowledge. The thought of freely sharing techniques was revolutionary, dangerous even, but he could not deny the results he was seeing all around him. Later that evening, Thelvar invited the Admiral to join him in the observation lounge. They looked out at the busy repair bays, watching humans and aliens working together on dozens of different projects. Why did you really bring me here, Captain? Krekthor asked quietly. Because I thought humans were inferior, Thelvar admitted. I thought our way was the only correct way. I was wrong. Not completely wrong. Velcran engineering is excellent, refined over millennia, but it is not the only path to excellence. These humans taught me something important, Thelvar continued. Perfection in isolation is still isolation. Our people have spent thousands of years perfecting one approach. Humans learned every approach, and in doing so, they discovered something we missed. Innovation comes from combining different perspectives, not from refining a single perspective endlessly. Krekthor was silent for a long time. You are suggesting we change the very foundation of how our people develop technology. I am suggesting we learn from the humans, as they learned from us, Thelvar said. We do not need to abandon our methods. We need to expand them, combine Velcran precision with human adaptability, maintain our standards while opening our minds to new possibilities. Before the Admiral could respond, alarms began blaring across the station. A new situation was developing. A ship from a species no one had encountered before had just entered the system. The vessel was clearly damaged and in distress. Communications attempts were failing because no one understood their language or technology. This was first contact with an unknown species, happening under emergency conditions. And their technology was completely alien, unlike anything in any database. Soman immediately assembled a response team. She called for volunteers from every species present at the station. We have never seen this technology before, she announced. None of us have. But together, we have more knowledge and experience than any single species could possess. We can figure this out. Admiral Krekthor watched in amazement as humans, Velcrans, Draxians, Quellans, and Solarians gathered together. They pooled their knowledge, comparing the unknown ship's design to everything they knew. The humans led the coordination, but every species contributed their expertise. Thelvar found himself working alongside Jiwu and Somin, offering insights from Velcran engineering while they connected those insights to human and Draxian techniques. The unknown ship's power system seemed to use principles similar to Velcran quantum technology, but implemented in a completely different way. It took 6 hours of intense cooperation. Engineers from 5 different species working together, communicating across language barriers, combining their different approaches to understand something none of them had seen before. When they finally figured out how to stabilize the damaged systems, everyone felt a sense of shared accomplishment. The rescued aliens, who called themselves Kelvorians, were grateful beyond words. They had expected to die in space. Instead, they found a station where different species worked together to save strangers. After the crisis, Admiral Krekthor approached Somin. That was remarkable. How did you coordinate so many different specialists so quickly? It is what we do every day, Somin said simply. Problems do not care about species boundaries. Solutions should not either. The repairs on the Crimson Talon were going better than anyone expected. Thelvar had begun to relax, accepting that his ship would soon be operational again. The human engineers had proven themselves capable, even if their methods remained strange to him. Then the alarms started blaring across the entire station. Thelvar was in his quarters when the emergency sirens began. He rushed to the bridge and opened communications with the station control center. Jiwoo's face appeared on the screen, and for the first time, Thelvar saw concern in her eyes. "Captain, we have an emergency situation. A Solarian merchant vessel just entered the station with critical reactor containment failure. Radiation is leaking. Please stand by for possible evacuation orders." Thelvar felt ice form in his veins. Solarian reactors were notoriously complex and dangerous. Even small containment breaches could lead to catastrophic failures that would destroy everything within a kilometer radius. Through his viewport, Thelvar watched as a Solarian ship limped into the station. The Azure Pearl was a beautiful vessel under normal circumstances, but now it looked like a dying creature. Sections of its hull glowed with the wrong color, indicating severe radiation exposure. All across the station, alien vessels began powering up their engines, preparing to flee. A Draxian cruiser undocked immediately, its captain unwilling to risk staying near a failing reactor. A Quellan science ship followed moments later. Even the steady, logical Quellans knew when danger was too great. Velthar appeared on the bridge. "Captain, we should prepare to undock as well. Our repairs are not complete, but we can limp away from the blast radius." Thelvar nodded. It was the logical choice. The sensible choice. They had no obligation to stay. This was not their emergency, but something made him pause. He opened communications to the Azure Pearl. A Solarian captain appeared on screen, her breathing rapid, her skin discolored from radiation exposure. Captain Jenka looked like she was barely staying conscious. "This is Captain Thelvar of the Crimson Talon. What is your status?" "Reactor containment." "Failing," Jenka gasped. "My crew is dying. We tried to reach a Solarian facility, but we could not make it. This was the closest station." Her eyes showed desperation. "Please, can anyone help us?" "How long until complete failure?" Thelvar asked. 10 hours, maybe 12. "But my crew will be dead from radiation in 6 hours. Thelvar felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders, the weight of responsibility. He knew what he should do. Protect his own crew, undock and flee. Let the Solarians face their fate alone. But he thought of Jiwoo's calm confidence, of Doyen's adaptability, of Hyejin's willingness to try new solutions. The humans did not run from difficult problems. They faced them. "Stand by, Captain Jenka," Thelvar said. He switched channels to station control. Jiwoo was already there, surrounded by screens showing the evacuation in progress. But she was not preparing to flee. She was assembling information, pulling up technical diagrams. "Station Coordinator Jiwoo," Thelvar said formally. "The Crimson Talon is offering assistance if needed. We will not evacuate." Jiwoo looked surprised for a moment, then nodded with respect. "Thank you, Captain. Please stand by." Another human appeared on the screen beside Jiwoo. A woman introduced herself as Soman, the Crisis Response Coordinator. She looked young, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "We are not evacuating," Soman announced to the remaining ships on the station. "We are going to fix that reactor. I am assembling an emergency response team now." Thelvar was shocked. "You cannot be serious. Solarian reactor technology is among the most complex in the galaxy. Even Solarian engineers struggle with reactor repairs. You have never worked on one before?" "That is correct," Soman admitted. "We have never worked on a Solarian reactor, but we have worked on 43 other types of reactors. Give us 6 hours." On the screen, Thelvar could see Captain Jenka's face fall into complete despair. 6 hours. The same amount of time her crew had left before the radiation killed them all. She collapsed in her command chair, all hope leaving her eyes. But Somin was not finished. "Captain Jenka, we need you to transmit all technical manuals for your reactor system. Every schematic, every diagram, every maintenance log you have. Transmit it all immediately." Within minutes, data began flooding into the station's computers. Enormous files containing thousands of pages of Solarian technical documentation. The information was incredibly detailed but written in complex Solarian technical language that few other species could understand. Thelvar watched through his viewport as human engineers gathered in a large conference room. Soman stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Solarian reactor schematics. Doyen was there, along with Hyejin, Jiwoo, Minho, and a dozen others. A new human named Junho, introduced as a metallurgy specialist, was studying the reactor's containment vessel. The humans spread out the technical manuals and began comparing them to their massive database of other reactor technologies. Thelvar could not hear their discussion, but he could see the intensity of their focus. They were not panicking, they were working. After 2 hours, Soman sent out a message. "We believe we understand the problem. The reactor uses a containment field similar to Draxian technology, but with some key differences. The cooling system mirrors human fusion reactors from about 30 years ago. The control systems are unique, but Jiwoo has found parallels in Velcran computational architecture." Thelvar felt something strange. Pride. A human had just complimented Velcran engineering, using it as a reference point to solve an impossible problem. Junho appeared on the communication channel. "We have identified the failure point. There is a microfracture in an exotic alloy cylinder in the containment field generator. It is small, less than a millimeter wide, but it is growing. That is where the radiation is leaking from. Can you repair it?" Shenka asked weakly from her command chair. "We are going to try," Junho said. "But Captain, the radiation levels in that chamber are extreme. Is anyone on your crew still healthy enough to guide us?" Jenka shook her head. "My engineering team is completely incapacitated. Some are already unconscious. I am sorry, I cannot help you." Soman stepped forward. "Then we go in ourselves." Thelvar spoke up immediately. "That is suicide. Those radiation levels would kill most species within minutes. Humans have higher radiation tolerance than many species." Soman said, "We are not immune, but we can survive longer than most. We will work in 30-minute shifts, rotating out to minimize exposure." "No one is forced to do this," she continued, turning to her team. "I need volunteers only." Every single human in the room raised their hand. Every single one. Thelvar felt something unfamiliar in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as respect. Deep, genuine respect. The human team entered the Azure Pearl wearing protective suits covered in radiation shielding. They carried portable scanners and repair equipment. Thelvar monitored their progress through video feeds from their helmet cameras. The reactor chamber was a nightmare. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Radiation readings spiked off the scales. The humans moved carefully but quickly, knowing every second counted against both the crew's survival and their own exposure limits. Minho found the fractured cylinder. It was tiny, almost invisible without enhanced scanning equipment. The crack was growing even as they watched, spreading slowly through the exotic metal. "We cannot weld this," Minho reported. "The alloy is too unstable. Heat would make it worse." Junho examined the fracture carefully. "I have an idea. It is going to sound crazy, but I think it might work." He explained his plan. They would wrap the cylinder with human carbon fiber material, the same composite Hyejin had used on the Crimson Talon. Then they would seal it with a thermal setting compound originally developed for Velcran medical applications. The combination would stabilize the fracture without requiring heat that could make it worse. "That is insane," Thelvar said, listening to the discussion. "Those materials were never designed to work together in a radiation environment. Do you have a better idea?" Junho asked simply. Thelvar was silent. He did not. The humans worked with incredible speed and precision. Junho wrapped the carbon fiber material around the damaged cylinder, while Hyejin prepared the medical compound. They had 20 minutes before they would be forced to evacuate due to radiation exposure. The compound was applied carefully. It began setting immediately, forming a hard shell around the composite wrap. The radiation readings began to drop, slowly at first, then faster. With 5 minutes left in their safe exposure time, the radiation levels stabilized. The leak was sealed. But there was a problem. The repair was holding, but barely. The cylinder needed additional support, something to reinforce it from the outside. The humans were out of time. They had to evacuate immediately or risk fatal exposure. Thelvar made a decision. "Felthar, gather our engineering team. We are going to help." "Captain?" Felthar looked shocked. "The humans have bought us time, but they cannot finish the job. Velcran physiology handles radiation differently. We can work in that environment for another hour. We finish what they started." Minutes later, Velcran engineers entered the reactor chamber. They found the human repair and understood immediately what needed to be done. The next morning, Thelvar stood in the main engineering bay of his ship and watched the human team prepare their equipment. He had insisted on personally overseeing every step of the repair process. No one would touch his ship without his direct observation. Do-yoon arrived with a team of 6 engineers, including a woman he introduced as Hyejin, the material specialist. They spread out diagnostic tools and began their assessment of the quantum drive housing. Thelvar handed Do-yoon a datapad containing the standard Velcron repair protocols. Do-yoon studied the protocols carefully for several minutes. Then he looked up at Thelvar with a respectful expression. "These are excellent procedures, Captain. Very thorough. However, with your permission, we would like to suggest a different approach." Thelvar felt his spine stiffen. Different? These protocols have been refined over thousands of years by the best Velcron engineers. "I understand, sir," Do-yoon said calmly, "and they work perfectly for standard damage. But your crack pattern is unusual. The metal has fractured along crystalline boundaries in multiple directions. Following standard protocols would require replacing the entire housing unit." "Then we replace it," Thelvar said firmly. Hyejin stepped forward. She was small even for a human, barely reaching Thelvar's chest height, but she spoke with confidence. "Captain, a replacement housing would take 8 weeks to arrive from Velcron space. We can offer you another option. A hybrid repair using human composite reinforcement combined with Velcron crystalline bonding techniques. Your ship could be ready to fly in 5 days. Hybrid?" Thelvar's voice was cold. "You want to mix human materials with Velcron engineering? That is unacceptable," Hyejin did not argue. Instead, she pulled up a holographic display showing molecular simulations. "This is how the crack will propagate if left unrepaired. This is how a standard patch would hold, assuming we could fabricate one quickly. And this is our proposed solution." The simulations ran through various stress scenarios. The hybrid approach showed remarkable stability, actually stronger than the original construction in several test cases. Hyejin then displayed 3 case studies of similar repairs on other vessels, all of which had held perfectly for years of service. "The choice is yours, Captain," Hyejin said. "We can order a replacement part and you wait 2 months, or we can implement this repair and have you operational in less than a week. We will not proceed without your authorization." Thelvar studied the data for a long time. Velthar stood beside him, also reviewing the simulations. Finally, the first officer spoke quietly. "The engineering is sound, Captain, and our crew needs to get home." It went against everything Thelvar believed about maintaining the purity of Velcron design, but the evidence was difficult to ignore. He gave a curt nod. "Proceed, but I will monitor every step." "Of course," Do-yoon agreed. "We welcome your oversight." The repair work began immediately. Thelvar watched as the human team worked with surprising coordination. They did not follow rigid procedures like Velcron engineers. Instead, they adapted constantly, adjusting their approach based on what they found. A young human named Minho was working on the power distribution network, fixing one of the secondary problems the diagnostic had revealed. Thelvar observed as Minho pulled parts from what looked like a box of scrap materials. Random connectors, mismatched cables, pieces that clearly came from different technologies. "What are you doing?" Thelvar demanded. "Those parts are not rated for Velcron systems." Minho looked up with a friendly smile. "You're right, Captain. This connector is from a Draxian ship, and this relay is actually from a human mining vessel. But watch this." He assembled the pieces into a temporary bypass for the damaged section. When he activated it, the power flow stabilized immediately. The readings showed even better efficiency than the original Velcron components. Thelvar stared at the readouts in disbelief. "How did you know that would work?" Minho shrugged. "Electricity is electricity, Captain. Once you understand the basic principles, the specific technology does not matter much. You just need to match voltage, current capacity, and resistance. These parts were available, and they fit the requirements perfectly." It was such a simple explanation, yet it challenged everything Thelvar had learned. Velcron engineering was about precision and purity. Every component was designed specifically for its purpose. The idea of mixing parts from different species seemed wrong, almost offensive, yet it worked. Later that day, Thelvar found himself in the central coordination hub of the station. He had come looking for Jiwoo to ask about the repair timeline, but when he found her, he stopped and simply watched. Jiwoo sat at a large console surrounded by multiple screens. Each screen showed a different repair project happening somewhere on the station. She was managing 17 separate jobs simultaneously, coordinating dozens of engineers across multiple bays. As Thelvar watched, she switched between languages with ease. She gave instructions in broken Draxian to one team, then switched to Quellan technical dialect for another, then back to human language for a third. She used different measurement systems in the same conversation, converting between them effortlessly. One screen showed a team facing an unexpected problem with a Solarian ship. Without hesitation, Jiwoo redirected 2 engineers from another project to assist. She adjusted schedules, shifted resources, and kept everything flowing smoothly. Her flexibility was astonishing. Velcran coordinators followed strict schedules and protocols. Any deviation required approval from supervisors. But Jiwoo made decisions instantly, adapting to changing situations in real time. She noticed Thelvar watching and smiled. "Captain, did you need something?" "I was curious about our repair progress," Thelvar said. "But I see you are busy." "Never too busy for an update," Jiwoo said. She pulled up the Crimson Talon status on her main screen. Doyen's team is ahead of schedule. The quantum drive housing repair is proceeding well. Yejin is preparing the composite materials now. We should begin the bonding process tomorrow morning. "You coordinate all of this yourself?" Thelvar asked, gesturing at the multiple screens. "It is my job," Jiwoo said simply. "Every project is different, every problem is unique. You cannot rely on fixed procedures. You have to stay flexible, ready to adapt." That evening, Commander Velthar invited Doyun to share a meal in the station's cantina. Thelvar accompanied them, curious to learn more about human methods. The cantina served food for dozens of species, with atmospheric zones adjusted for different physiologies. Over a meal, Velthar asked the question Thelvar had been wondering. How did humans become so skilled at repairing other species' technology? "You are the newest spacefaring race." Doyen took a drink before answering. "That is exactly why we became good at it. When humans first joined the galactic community, we were far behind everyone else technologically. To establish ourselves, human stations had to offer services to other species. We could not compete with advanced technology, so we competed with adaptability. We had to learn everyone's systems just to survive out here," Doyen continued. "Velcran, Draxian, Quellan, Solarian, dozens of others. At first it was overwhelming. Each species has completely different design philosophies. But over time we noticed something interesting." He leaned forward, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "When you understand 50 different approaches to the same problem, you start seeing patterns. You learn that there are many correct solutions, not just one. A power conduit is a power conduit. Whether it is built by humans or Velcrans or Draxians, the principles are the same. Only the implementation differs." "Your people design technology for your people," Doyen said. "That makes perfect sense. It is efficient and refined. But we had to learn everyone's technology, and that gave us a different kind of knowledge. The knowledge of how different solutions can combine to create something new." Thelvar listened carefully. The human's words made sense, though they challenged his fundamental beliefs about engineering. Velcran technology was refined over millennia. How could mixing it with other approaches make it better? The next day he got his answer. Hyejin began the critical phase of repairing the quantum drive housing. Thelvar watched as she applied the human composite material to the crack. The material was strange, almost organic looking, with fibers woven in complex patterns. She layered it carefully, using techniques that seemed more like art than engineering. Then she applied the Velcran crystalline bonding compound. This was pure Velcran technology, a substance that could fuse metal at the molecular level. But Hyejin used it in a way no Velcran engineer would have considered. She applied it in thin layers between the composite fibers, creating a structure that was part human, part Velcran, and entirely new. The bonding process took 6 hours. When it was complete, Hyejin ran stress tests. The repaired section held perfectly under loads that would have destroyed the original housing. "It is stronger than before," Thelvar said, staring at the readings. "Yes," Hyejin agreed. "The composite fibers distribute stress in ways that solid metal cannot. And the crystalline bonding provides molecular-level integrity. Together they create something better than either could achieve alone." Thelvar stood in silence for a long moment. His ship was being repaired by humans using methods that broke every rule he had been taught. The warning lights on the bridge of the Crimson Talon had been flashing red for 3 weeks now. Captain Thelvar stared at them with growing frustration, his silver carapace reflecting the angry glow. His ship, a proud Velcran warship, was dying slowly in the void of space. The quantum drive housing had cracked during the battle with raiders. At first, it seemed like a minor problem, but as days passed, the crack spread like a spider's web through the metal. Now the life support systems were failing. His crew of 200 warriors was suffering in the cold, struggling to breathe properly. Commander Velthar approached the captain's chair. The older officer moved carefully, conserving energy in the thin air. He carried a datapad with navigation charts glowing on its surface. "Captain, we need to make a decision," Velthar said quietly. "The nearest Velcran repair station is 6 weeks away. With our current power levels, we might not make it. Half the crew is already showing signs of oxygen deprivation." Thelvar knew what his second officer was suggesting. There was another option. A human repair station called Harmony 7 was only 4 days away. But the thought of asking humans for help made his pride burn like acid in his throat. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. Barely 200 years among the stars, while the Velcran had been exploring space for over 4,000 years. Humans were soft-skinned, weak, and primitive in so many ways. Their technology was a patchwork of borrowed designs from older species. How could they possibly repair a Velcran warship? "The humans," Thelvar said with disgust. "You want me to trust our lives to those children playing with tools they barely understand?" Velthar met his captain's eyes without flinching. "I want you to trust our crew's lives to the nearest facility that can help us. Pride is a luxury we cannot afford right now, sir. 3 of our engineers collapsed this morning. The medical bay is full." Thelvar looked around his bridge. His crew members were moving slowly, their normally sharp movements dulled by exhaustion and lack of oxygen. Some were slumped at their stations, fighting to stay conscious. These were his people, his responsibility. He made his decision with a heavy heart. "Set course for Station Harmony 7. Maximum speed our dying engines can manage." The journey took 3.5 days. Every hour felt like torture to Thelvar. He kept imagining the reception they would receive. Humans would probably panic at the sight of a Velcran warship. They would fumble with their tools and make the damage worse. They might even refuse to help out of fear. When the station finally appeared on their sensors, Thelvar was surprised by its size. Harmony 7 was massive, with dozens of repair bays extending like arms from a central hub. Ships of all sizes and species were docked there. He recognized Draxian cruisers, Quellan science vessels, even a Solarian merchant ship. The station was busy with activity. A communication channel opened. A young human woman's face appeared on the screen. She had dark hair tied back efficiently and calm brown eyes that showed no fear at the sight of a Velcran captain. "This is Jiwoo, Repair Bay Coordinator for Harmony 7. Welcome, Captain. We received your distress signal. I see you have critical damage to your quantum drive housing and failing life support. We can dock you immediately in Bay 7. Please send your damage reports to my station and we will have a full diagnostic ready in 3 hours." Thelvar was taken aback by her confidence. No greeting of fear, no hesitation, just professional efficiency. He found himself responding before he could think. 3 hours? Our own facilities take 2 days for diagnostics. Jiwoo smiled slightly. We work a bit differently here, Captain. Bay 7 is ready for you. Please proceed when comfortable. The docking process was smooth. Too smooth. The human station's guidance systems worked perfectly with Velcran technology, despite the species having completely different design philosophies. As the massive warship settled into its berth, Thelvar saw human technicians already gathering near the airlock, ready to board. He met them in the docking corridor with Velthar at his side. The Velcran captain towered over the humans, his armored body nearly twice their height. But none of them seemed intimidated. An older human man stepped forward and extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Captain Thelvar, I'm Doyen, Senior Engineer. I'll be overseeing your repairs personally. With your permission, I'd like to tour the damage and start our assessment." Thelvar ignored the extended hand. "I will accompany you. I need to see what you people actually know about Velcran systems." Doyen simply nodded and lowered his hand without offense. "Of course, Captain. This way, please." As they walked through the ship, Doyen asked intelligent questions about the damage. He understood the basic principles of quantum drives, even though human technology used different methods. He took readings with handheld scanners and made notes on a datapad. His team worked quickly and quietly, respectful of the Velcran vessel. After an hour of inspection, Doyen invited Thelvar to tour the human repair facility itself. The captain agreed, curious despite his prejudices. What he saw in the main repair bay shocked him. 12 different ships were being worked on simultaneously. Not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen different species. In one corner, humans were repairing a Draxian plasma conduit system. In another, they were recalibrating a Quellan navigation array. Each species had completely different technology, different design principles, different power systems. Yet the humans moved between them all with apparent ease. Thelvar stopped to watch a young human woman named Yunji working on the Draxian ship. She was using what looked like a primitive human welding tool combined with Draxian thermal paste. The technique was unusual, mixing two different technological approaches. But as Thelvar watched, the repair held perfectly under stress tests. The Draxian captain stood nearby, supervising. Thelvar approached him, recognizing the distinctive red scaling of a merchant clan leader. "You trust humans with your ship?" Thelvar asked in the Draxian language. The Draxian captain laughed, a rumbling sound. "Trust them? Captain, this is my third visit to this station. 2 months ago, my plasma conduits failed in a way my own engineers could not fix. They said I needed to replace the entire system, which would have cost me a fortune and taken half a year. The humans fixed it in 5 days using a hybrid technique. It works better now than when the ship was new." Thelvar was silent, processing this information. Before he could respond, Jiwoo appeared with a datapad in her hands. "Captain Thelvar, we've completed the diagnostic." She offered him the pad. 2.5 hours, as promised. He took the pad and began reading. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the report. The humans had not only identified the obvious crack in the quantum drive housing, but had found 3 other problems his own engineers had missed: a microfracture in the power distribution network, a failing seal in the environmental systems, a degraded coupling in the navigation array. All of these were secondary problems, but left unchecked, they would have caused serious failures within weeks. "How did you find these?" Thelvar demanded. "My engineers ran full diagnostics before we left our last port." Jiwoo's expression remained professional. "We see a lot of different ships here, Captain. Patterns become visible when you work across multiple technologies. Your power distribution issue, for example, shows the same signature as a common problem in Quellan vessels. Different technology, same underlying physics." Velthar was reading over his captain's shoulder. He looked at Thelvar with raised eye ridges, the Velcron equivalent of raised eyebrows. The message was clear. These humans knew what they were doing. Thelvar made his decision. "Proceed with the repairs." "All of them," Jiwoo nodded. "We'll begin immediately. Your crew is welcome to use our station facilities while we work. We have environmental settings for Velcron physiology in sections C through F." As the humans departed to begin their work, Thelvar stood in the docking bay, watching them move with purpose and confidence. His prejudices had not disappeared, but they had cracked, just like his ship's quantum drive housing. Maybe, just maybe, these humans had something to teach the galaxy after all. The repairs on the Crimson Talon were completed 3 days after the crisis with the Azure Pearl. Thelvar stood on his bridge, running systems checks, and found himself amazed by the results. His ship was not just repaired, it was improved. The quantum drive operated with greater efficiency than before the damage. The power distribution system ran smoother than it ever had. Even minor systems showed improvements. But Thelvar was in no hurry to leave. Something had changed in him during his time at Station Harmony 7. His assumptions about humans, about engineering, about the nature of excellence itself, had all been challenged. He wanted to understand more before returning to Velcron space. He spent his final days at the station seeking answers. He interviewed alien captains who had used human repair facilities, trying to understand why they kept returning despite having their own species' advanced stations available. A grizzled Draxian merchant captain named Korval shared his story over drinks in the cantina. "I have been flying for 40 years, Captain," the Draxian said. "I know every Draxian repair station in 3 sectors. They are excellent, fast, professional, they follow every protocol perfectly. So why come here?" Thelvar asked. Korval laughed, his red scales rippling with amusement. "Because my own engineers follow the manual. If the problem is in the manual, they fix it quickly. If the problem is not in the manual, they are lost. They stand around scratching their heads and eventually tell me I need expensive replacements. Humans do not work that way, Corval continued. Last year I had a plasma conduit problem that made no sense. The system was failing, but all diagnostics said everything was fine. I took it to 3 Draxian stations. They all told me the same thing. Replace the entire conduit network. Cost was astronomical. Time required was half a year. So I came here desperate. A human engineer named Unji looked at it for 2 hours. Then she smiled and said she found the problem. There was a feedback loop created by interaction between my communication array and the plasma system. No one had ever seen it before because Draxian ships do not usually mount that type of communication array. She fixed it in one day by adding a simple buffer between the systems. Cost was almost nothing. She did not follow the manual. She rewrote the manual. Thelvar heard similar stories from other captains. A Quellan science officer explained that her people had been spacefaring for 3,000 years. We have refined our technology to near perfection, she said with pride. But perfection in one direction can mean blindness in others. Humans have been in space for barely 200 years, the Quellan continued. But they have had to repair and maintain technology from dozens of species just to survive. We specialized. They generalized. And in a galaxy of growing complexity, generalization has become a strength. One evening, Thelvar found himself alone with Doyen in an observation lounge. They stood looking out at a view of distant Earth, a blue marble hanging in the darkness. Thelvar finally asked the question that had been bothering him most. How did humans become so skilled at this? You are the youngest spacefaring species, the least advanced technologically, yet somehow your repair bays are the best in the galaxy. How? Doyen was quiet for a long moment, staring at his homeworld. We did not have a choice, he finally said. When humanity reached the stars, we were desperate to establish ourselves. We had nothing special to offer. No unique resources, no advanced technology, no ancient wisdom. What we did have was location. Earth sits at a convergence of several major trade routes. So we built stations and offered services. But we were competing against species who had thousands of years of experience. We could not match their expertise in their own technologies. So we learned everyone's technology, Doyun said. Velcran, Draxian, Quellan, Solarian, all of them. At first it was overwhelming. But humans have always been good at learning. It is perhaps our greatest talent. He turned to face Thelvar directly. We had to learn everything because we specialized in nothing. Necessity bred innovation. When you are trying to survive, you cannot afford to be rigid. You adapt or you die. Humans adapted. Thelvar thought about this carefully. But how do you maintain quality? Velcran engineering is refined because we focus on perfecting our own systems. How can you be good at everything? Doyen smiled. That is the interesting part. We discovered something unexpected. When you learn many different approaches to the same problem, you start seeing connections. You understand the underlying principles better than someone who only knows one method. A power conduit is a power conduit, whether built by humans or Velcrans or Draxians. The physics is the same. Only the implementation differs. Once you understand that, you can combine techniques in ways that someone focused on a single approach would never consider. Jiwoo joined them in the observation lounge. She had just finished coordinating the day's repair schedules and looked tired but satisfied. Thelvar asked her to explain how the human repair network functioned. We share everything, Jiwoo said simply. Every repair, every modification, every innovation developed by human engineers anywhere gets added to our central database. When one human discovers a better technique, every human repair bay learns it within days. You have no trade secrets? Thelvar asked, surprised. No proprietary methods? Why would we? Jiwoo responded. Knowledge is not diminished by sharing. It multiplies. Every problem solved by one station makes all stations better. Competition between human facilities would be pointless. We succeed together or we fail separately. This was so different from Velcran culture. Velcran engineering guilds guarded their techniques jealously. Master engineers passed knowledge only to carefully chosen apprentices. The idea of freely sharing innovations with competitors seemed insane. Yet the results spoke for themselves. Human repair bays worked with incredible efficiency because every human engineer had access to the collective knowledge of all human engineers. Later, Thelvar met with Xungwu, the station administrator. The older human had been a naval engineer on Earth before coming to the stars. He shared drinks with Thelvar, and spoke about human philosophy. Most species develop technology in isolation, Seong-woo explained. Each species perfected their own approach over thousands of years. This created incredibly refined, specialized knowledge, but also created blind spots. Humans learned from everyone. We are not the best at any one thing, but we are good at everything. And when you combine techniques from 50 different species, you find solutions that none of them could discover alone. It is like cooking, Seong-woo continued, using a human metaphor. If you only know how to prepare food from your own culture, you become very skilled at those specific dishes. But if you learn cooking techniques from many cultures, you can create fusion dishes that are better than any single tradition could produce alone. Thelvar spent time watching the repair bay operations from the observation deck. He saw something remarkable. A young human apprentice named Tae-hyung was working on a complex power distribution problem. The issue involved 3 different systems interacting in unexpected ways. Tae-hyung solved it by combining Velcran precision calibration with Draxian power management and human adaptive algorithms. The solution was elegant and completely novel. No one had ever tried combining those 3 approaches before. When senior engineers praised his innovative thinking, Tae-hyung seemed confused. "Is this not obvious?" he asked. "The Velcran method gives precise control, the Draxian method handles high power loads, and human algorithms adapt to changing conditions. Using all 3 together just makes sense." To him, crossing technological paradigms was natural. He had grown up learning that way. The boundaries that limited engineers from other species simply did not exist in his mind. Thelvar realized something profound. This was not just about repair techniques. This was about fundamental philosophy. Velcran culture valued purity, tradition, and perfection within established boundaries. Human culture valued adaptation, innovation, and combining diverse approaches. Neither philosophy was wrong, but in an increasingly complex galaxy, where different species and technologies interacted constantly, the human approach had significant advantages. On his final evening at the station, Thelvar returned to his ship. The repairs were complete, finished 2 days ahead of even the revised schedule. His vessel was ready to depart, but he found himself reluctant to leave. He stood on his bridge and looked around at his ship. It was still a Velcran warship, but now it carried something else. Human innovations, human techniques, human philosophy embedded in its systems. It was stronger for it. Velthar joined him on the bridge. "The crew is ready to depart when you give the order, Captain." "I know," Thelvar said, "but I have been thinking. In 3 months, we will need scheduled maintenance. Standard protocol requires using Velcran facilities." "Yes, sir," Velthar agreed. "I want to request permission to return here instead." Velthar smiled, a rare expression for the normally serious officer. "I thought you might say that, Captain. I think it is a wise decision." Thelvar sent his departure notification to station control. Jiwoo's face appeared on his screen, professional as always. "Safe travels, Captain Thelvar. It was an honor having you here." "The honor was mine, Coordinator Jiwoo," Thelvar said formally. "You and your people have taught me much.